Thank you to Jim Boyle for composing and sharing that music with us. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County. I'm Dan Lambert, and I serve this congregation as minister. Our progressive, welcoming, inclusive, and judgment-free congregation is a liberal religious community of diverse and free-thinking individuals. UUFCC is a spiritual community where reason and social justice matter. As people who learn, love, share, and serve together, we welcome all into our family. We begin our service each week by singing an invitation to gather together, even though we are scattered in many different places because of the pandemic, and we're gathering on Zoom and YouTube Live. So let us sing, enter, rejoice, and zoom in. Maybe we need to amend that to enter, rejoice, and Zoom or YouTube Live in. That would be too long of a title, actually. But let's sing, clap your hands, and join us as we sing, enter, rejoice, and come in. Thank you all. As we prepare to light the chalice this morning, Rose Klein has words for us for the chalice lighting. We'll go ahead and spotlight Rose, and you can unmute yourself and share those words, please.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to be saying a few words about the chalice, and so while I'm saying our words just after that, please light your chalice. It's an affirmation. In these hard times, let us first look to the response of love. In the midst of challenge, may our chalice flame bear witness to the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. In the midst of uncertainty, may our chalice be a beacon of encouragement that our values may guide our choices. Let us look first to the response of love. Please light your chalice.
Thank you so much, Rose. And join with me as I light this chalice and we recite our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our aspiration, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Today's worship associates and those participating in the service are people who have been participating in the discussion about the book, Widening the Circle of Concern, which we'll share a little bit about later. So that's why we have different people doing different pieces. So thank you, Rose, for doing the chalice lighting. And now we invite Bill Stanwood to share opening words for us. Bill?
Yes, thank you, Dan. The words that are hopefully going to reflect an important part of the Widening the Circle experience. It's called Affirmation of Hope, and it's by Loretta Williams. We, the bearers of the dream, affirm that a new vision of hope is emerging. We pledge to work for that community in which justice will be actively present. We affirm that there is struggle yet ahead, yet we know that in the struggle is the hope for the future. We affirm that we are co-creators of the future, not passive pawns. And we stand united in affirmation of our hope and vision of a just and inclusive society. We affirm the unity of all persons. We affirm brotherhood and sisterhood that allows us to touch upon each other's humanity. We affirm a unity that opens our eyes, ears, and hearts to see the different but common forms of oppression, suffering, and pain. Yet we are one in the image of God, and we celebrate our hopes for human unity. Within ourselves and within the gathered community, we will discover the strength not to hide in indifference. Affirming that hope, publicly expressed, energizes and enables us to move forward. Together, we pledge action to transcend barriers, be they racial, political, economic, social, or religious. We pledge to make our tomorrows become our todays.
Thank you so much, Bill, for sharing opening words. Thank you for doing that. We certainly welcome those of you who are visitors with us. If you're new or fairly new, we love to have visitors, even though this is a challenging time to do so remotely on Zoom or YouTube Live, but we're very glad for you to be here. If you happen to be new or fairly new with us, we'd love to be able to say hello. So if you don't mind, you could put your name in the chat and tell us where you are and maybe why you decided to join us or who invited you. And then you'll get a lot of people that will say hi back, and that'll be pretty fun. So we invite you to do that now during this time. We also know that during this time, a lot of us are getting our COVID vaccine shots. And it's kind of interesting because we have an opportunity to celebrate that, which is, getting a vaccine is never something we've ever celebrated before. But we want to find out how many of us have gotten our COVID vaccine shots. So Jackie has created a poll. You're going to see a screen, a window pop up in your window. There it is. If you would choose which one of those and click on the correct answer, I've completed my vaccines is the first one. I've had one and I'm scheduled for my second is your second choice. I plan to start the process before the end of April is your third, or I will not get one. So you could click one of those and then click submit. And then we're going to watch those totals grow over the next minute or so. We're just curious to see where we are and what kind of progress we're making. I found out on Thursday that I get my first COVID vaccine on Tuesday of this week up at the Sarasota Mall. So by the end of April, I'll have my second and I'll be totally good to go. I think tomorrow I read in the state of Florida, the age will drop to 40 and under. And then in the following week, it'll be a free-for-all for all adults 18 and older to get theirs. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to get everybody who wants a vaccine to that point by early or midsummer. And then we have to decide what that means for us as far as reopening. So a lot of us are having a discussion about when we will feel safe to gather back here in the sanctuary, which we're all pretty excited about. So if you haven't yet voted or indicated a preference in that poll or what describes you, go ahead and do so. Right now, it looks like we have 29 votes that have come in. We'll give you another few seconds to try to figure that out. And
Dan, I'm not able to get into the poll, so I wonder if other people also, it's not working from my computer.
It's because
okay, Jackie, can you share that one more time, please?
Co-hosts are not allowed to poll at the same time as being co-hosts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we found that out.
That's an interesting restriction.
The chat is disabled.
I can't even see it. I don't see the, this hasn't come up yet.
And I can't see the poll either.
Okay,
and I'm not a
Jackie,
speaker.
Can we try that one more? This is one of our glitchy, fun technical things.
Okay, hang on.
So this is something we wanted to try, and this is super important because during the annual meeting, this is how we're going to vote on stuff. So giving this a chance now is also really important.
When it came up on my
Oh,
screen.
there we go. It should be up again.
Okay.
Does everybody see it? So you click one of those, and then you click submit.
Yeah, it doesn't allow.
And all right, I just did it on my computer. So there's a few more.
Dan, you also need to read through the chat because there's an issue going on that
Okay.
And I'm still not seeing the chart
The
that I'm
poll?
supposed to click on. Yeah.
Okay.
We
Do you see a
resubmitted-
window in front of you that has the 4 options or not?
No.
Okay. Well, this is why we're doing this practice. And yeah, it's true that it's kind of weird and
I
awkward and
see.
all of that. All right, so far 36 people have participated. We're going to give it just a few more seconds and then we'll share the results, assuming we can figure out how to do that, and you'll see how this works. All right, so Jackie, let's go ahead and end the poll. You know, this is not a scientific thing, by the way. This is just something we're trying. And if you can share the results.
I don't know what is good. My results say 0. So if people,
Okay, there we go. We see them.
you see them, I can't see them.
Yeah.
So
That is super odd.
yeah, it's really weird.
So on my screen, I have completed my vaccines at 71%, and there were 38 people who were able to respond. I've had one and scheduled for my second. That's another 13%. I plan to start the process by the end of April. That's another 13%. And just one 3% indicated that they're not planning to get the vaccine. So I'd say we're in pretty good shape. That's exciting. It also gives us an indication of maybe some of the technical challenge that we might have during the annual meeting. So thank you for doing that, everyone. That's interesting to see where we stand. Before we go on, I do want to just share a reminder that we are in covenant when we are here together. And I will just remind everyone that if you refuse to stay in covenant, that we will remove you from the proceedings. And we have Zoom directors who understand how to do that and why. When you come and you violate covenant, when you interrupt the worship, when you interrupt what we're doing, you are out of covenant. And while we do welcome everyone, that's our first principle, that is conditioned on abiding by our covenant. That's how we have community together. So you're welcome to stay, anyone who's willing to stay in covenant. If you violate the covenant, then we will have to remove you from the Zoom, unfortunately. So thank you for that. And I know that's again awkward, but sometimes that happens in community. Our song this morning is called For All That Is Our Life. And I would encourage you to sing along. They pay attention to the lyrics of this song as we sing and share our choir's rendition of For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use, to build the common good, and make our own days glad.
For these which harvest serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life.
For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that hurts, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For all that save our only strength.
Over the past several months, one of the most popular facets of our worship service every week has been the member spotlight. And while we've been spotlighting leaders and we've been going through our list of folks who joined the longest ago, today we want to spotlight our newest member of our community, Jackie McDaniel, who we hired a month ago to be our coronavirus connections coordinator. Many of you have gotten a chance to meet her through our activities here on Sunday morning or in other ways. She helps with Zoom and to make sure things work well. Often she sends out emails about activities. And so we just asked her to share for a few minutes. So let's go ahead and spotlight Jackie. Jackie, if you would turn on your video, please, and unmute yourself. Tell us some about you and your background.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys every Sunday morning via Zoom. However, I do wish that we were all still sharing, physical space with each other because, energy is palpable, and to be around other people, it's important for us to continue those connections. So just a little bit about me. I hail originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I actually said that incorrectly for those of you that are from the area. It's actually Baltimore. There's no T if you're from Baltimore. Anyway, I am adopted from South Korea to two wonderful parents into Baltimore, Maryland, and we moved to Port Charlotte when I was 5. My dad didn't feel that Baltimore was a great place to raise a little kid, so here we are. I've been here since 1987. A little bit about what I have done in my life. I was a healthcare administrator for a few years and decided that was not conducive to my health or my mental health, so I left that. And in the last year and a half, I have pursued just kind of a different lifestyle. For those of you that have worked in healthcare, it's extremely stressful. And I ended up actually with a heart condition, not to overshare, but which is conveniently time for me to leave healthcare, because in December of 2019 was my last month in healthcare. And then 3 months later, we were dealing with a pandemic. So I can imagine how much worse my life would have gotten with the onset of COVID. So I'm actually happy I left when I left. As hard as the last year and a half has been, it's been an interesting road. I've actually become a yoga teacher and opened my own virtual studio. So a lot of things have changed in the last 18 months. And just a few, I think a little over a month ago, I saw a listing for a Zoom COVID communications connections coordinator person. Dan's shaking his head like, yes, that's all the words that we use for this position. And on a whim, I decided to email and apply, and here I am. So my connections with this particular congregation is I used to come on Wednesdays to Karen Yelk's Healing Oasis. Karen is a very close friend of mine. We have not talked a whole lot since the pandemic started, but she is a very, very close friend, and we've done quite a few things together energetically. So that is how I am familiar with this particular establishment and everyone here. It's always a very welcoming environment. I also know Jim Cupo, who used to teach yoga for you guys on Saturday mornings before the pandemic. So Jim Cupo is a very close friend of mine. He actually was a mentor in a yoga training that I took. So lots of connections to this congregation, and everybody has been extremely warm and welcome here. Very, very helpful. I'm here for you guys. So anything that you have questions about, or if you need help with your computers, I'm pretty computer savvy. So, and MJ even let me have a key fob to the building. So if you guys need to meet, or if you guys need help with anything, or if you just need an energetic hug, I'm here to support you all. And thank you so, so much for allowing me to be a part of your family.
Thanks, Jackie. Wait, before you go, you've got to talk about your hat that says dog mom. We can't just ignore that.
I am a dog mom. And for those of you, I know that this congregation is animal lovers. All of you are animal lovers. I have 2 corgis, Sheldon and Penny, and they are my fur kids. They're currently sleeping at the moment, so I won't disturb them because they'll start barking and then you won't be able to hear me. But yes, I am a dog mom. Almost everything that I wear has some sort of dog or paw print or dog something on it. So yes, I am very much a dog mom.
Just one more reason you fit in here so well, Jackie.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. We really appreciate it. We'd like to invite all of us now to enter into a minute of silence. There's so much going on in our lives, so much anxiety, fear, challenges, short patience, misunderstanding, miscommunication, challenging to understand current events, what's happening in the world. And it's good to just take a minute and to stop, to shut out the noise, to pause, and just to reflect. So I invite you to join us for 1 minute as we have a moment of silence. After 1 minute, you'll hear me ding the bowl, and then we will sing together, Spirit of Life. So please join me for a moment of silence at this time. Thank you all for sharing in that moment. One great purpose of the world's faith traditions is bringing humanity closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. One purpose of this congregation is to encourage all who gather here to grow more and more generous in both spirit and action. Even during this pandemic, when we can only gather virtually online, we take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that supports this congregation and our many ministries. You can make your donations by mail as usual, just sending here to the office. You can do it through auto payment through your bank, or you can give electronically using the Venmo app on your smartphone. And we certainly appreciate your continued generosity during COVID, which hopefully will end in the next few months and we can get back together sometime mid or late summer. I know I keep saying that. I'm hopeful, but we'll see what happens. I mentioned earlier that today our spotlight for the sermon is on the circle, widening the circle of concern. Last summer, the UUA published a book that was put together by a special study group to take a look at issues of racism and white supremacy within the denomination of the Unitarian Universalist Association. This is something that dates back really to our beginning back in the 60s, where there were groups of people with African-American interest that were started and funded and then defunded. And then even to current times where there's been challenges with hiring practices and the way people felt like they were not included. And so the UUA put together a study group to try to figure out what was happening and to come up with recommendations. So last summer, they published this book called Widening the Circle of Concern that has several chapters about different components of our white supremacy and our racist past and addressing those. Last January, we started a study group that was co-facilitated by some of the folks from our racial justice group. And we wound up with 20 people participating in that discussion for 11 weeks. It was really impressive. And to have that many people in a congregation our size participate in such a difficult but interesting discussion for 11 whole weeks was even more impressive. And so what we want to do today is take an opportunity to ask those specific folks who were involved in that discussion over the past 11 weeks to share a little bit about their experience. We've got 3 specific questions that we're going to ask. No one's assigned to talk. I'm not going to call on names, but if you've been a part of that group and you would like to answer one or more of these questions, then what will happen is we will unspotlight me. And if you could then take your Zoom and put it on gallery view or speaker view, actually either one will work, but on speaker view, you will be able to see whoever is speaking and you can unmute yourself one at a time if you were part of that group and share your answer to these questions. So here are the 3 questions. First of all, why did you decide to be in the discussion group for Widening the Circle? Secondly, what did you learn or how were you different as a result of participating in the discussion for Widening the Circle? And the third question is the one that we've been wrestling with for the past few weeks, which is now what? We've had this discussion. How does that change us as a congregation? How does that help us to raise awareness and where do we go from here? So let's start with the first question. Why did you decide to be in the discussion group for Widening the Circle? So we'll go ahead and remove my spotlight, and anybody who's been part of that discussion for the past 11 months, if you would like to share your answer, just unmute yourself and start to talk and we'll see how this goes. So why did you decide to be in the discussion group for Widening the Circle? It's always bold to see who will go first.
I'll go first.
I'm not shy.
Oh.
My name is Stephanie Garrett, for those of you who I have not met yet. I've been through so many discussion programs within the UUA on white privilege and racism, institutional racism. I wasn't going to join, but then when I realized that Ginger was going to be the moderator, as one of the few people of color in this congregation and one of its longtime members, I felt that I had to go and support her because I didn't know if any other people of color would join the group. And that's the primary reason why I joined. What I learned wasn't anything new, but I got to meet people I would not have ordinarily met, at least almost 20 of us. I was really pleased that so many people hung in there for 11 weeks. That's a long time. What I got out of it, which I really think was really good, and where we go from here, is that we actually came up with some action items last week, which are very, very important. The one which I'm particularly interested in and was concerned because it had not been addressed is the proposed 8th principle that will be up for a vote in 2023 at the General Assembly. And it's something that I think we have to begin to study and discuss now, because we as a congregation have to vote on it first before our delegates can go to the GA in 2023.
Stephanie, before you go, I do have another question for you, since you mentioned your reason for being part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Were you satisfied with the depth of the discussion and the people who participated? Did you have some thoughts or takeaways from just that the fact there were 20 people who did this for 11 weeks?
20 people that did this for 11 weeks, and the majority of our very few minority members participated, was very important to me.
Yeah, good. Thank you so much. Someone else, please share. Why did you decide to be in the Widening the Circle discussion group?
I decided to.
Go ahead, Mary, go ahead and introduce
Okay.
yourself, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm Mary Levine. I'm not a member yet, but I hope to become one soon. I participated in this because I had sort of dipped my toes in the waters of this with my mind, doing some reading, my body. I participated in some actions, but it appealed to me to approach this with my spirit as well. And I didn't know how that would play out, but I liked that we had this discussion in Covenant. And I also learned about the 8th principle in these meetings, and I'm a fan. So that's it.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing, Mary. Someone else who was in the group, why did you decide to be a part of the Widening the Circle discussion group?
Hi, everybody. I'm Pat Oyer, and I got involved in Widening the Circle because I wanted to learn more about white supremacy, white privilege, and my own unconscious bias. I looked at it academically at first, and because I haven't had a lot of experience in the UU. But staying with the group, it really opened my eyes on a much deeper level to the Black experience in the UU specifically, and made me think about what's happening in America generally. And it's not like I came into this always having empathy for what was going on, but being part of this group and sharing and reading and listening, I came to understand that I needed to just be empathetic is just not nearly good enough, that I must become an active ally in the fight to make things fair and equitable and just. And I felt a heaviness and a responsibility to do that. So I hope that going forward, we're able to institute some anti-racist practices at the UUFCC and the UUA so we can put into action our UU principles.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. Someone else, why did you decide to be part of the Widening the Circle discussion group?
Well, if nobody else is, I'm Joe Oyer. I'm Patty's husband. She just spoke, but we speak for ourselves, obviously. And I joined because I wanted to learn more, and the fact that Ginger was a moderator was important to me, because I've learned so much from her when she's been up in front of the congregation. And what I learned, my eureka moment was there's a big difference between colorblind and being anti-racist, and hadn't really even given that a lot of thought, to be honest. And it's an active process. So I dipped a toe in the water, and I figured at this point I'm in for a toe, I'm in for a swim. I want to keep moving, and I want to see this taken to the point where it sounds like it's been dropped in the past by UUA. I'd like to make that right. So I'm in. That's it.
Good. Thank you, Joe, for sharing. Someone else, why did you decide to be part of the Widening the Circle discussion group? This is all very, very good input so far.
My name is Rose Klein. I'd like to say
Go
a few
ahead,
things.
Rose. Go right ahead, Rose.
Okay. Most people don't know that I'm a person of color. And I did do a little introduction a couple of weeks ago. But I was really intrigued with this group. And I wanted to learn more about, was it authentic? Was it real? Was it just academic? All those things. So I wanted to learn more about how we can be a part of that discussion, not just be the people that are going to be helped, if you want to use that word, and understand. And the whole issue of inclusion and all of that it's a very complicated issue. So, and I was very interested to hear what others were saying about this topic. And so I was happy to be a part of something that's even bigger than me. I mean, it includes all of us. And the fact that my white sisters and brothers really were very, what is the word I'm looking for? Very interested in this discussion and wanted to be a part of that. Anti-racism gave me a great deal of joy. I mean, I felt like I really was part of something rather than on the edges looking in. And the other thing that I want to mention is that I really, really appreciated Ginger heading the group because she was very focused and very respectful of everyone's opinions. She just led the group really, really well and just really did a wonderful, wonderful job in keeping us on track.
Good. Thank you for sharing, Rose. Let's go ahead and move on to the second question, which is also equally as important, about what did you learn from participating in the Widening the Circle discussion? How were you a different person? What are some of your most important takeaways from what you read or from the discussion from the 11 weeks of participating in that? So if you've already shared, you're free to go ahead and share again. There's not a limit to how many times you can share. But if you wouldn't mind, please talk for just a moment about what you learned, how you're different, and your major takeaways from being part of the Widening the Circle discussion for the past 11 weeks. Anyone go ahead and start.
Hi, I can share what I learned. The word anti-racism is very different than diversity and inequity and justice and all that. And I learned how much words have to do with my own personal attitude, and it just changes my whole way of thinking. When I say we are an anti-racist community, it's very different than we are a community that wants to be diverse and blah, blah, blah. It's an active, aware, directional statement, and I love that. I think I need that, we need that. And I also learned how much we're talking about this in future things we want to do, but how important it is that we take a look at this on every level, every committee, the board, in our written documents and the way we speak. And are we staying in this passive stance or even, backwards, or are we going forward with what we believe in and acting in it? Thank you. It was great.
Thanks, Lori, for sharing. Appreciate that very much. Someone else, what did you learn? What are your major takeaways? How are you different as a result of participating in the Widening the Circle discussion group for the past 11 weeks?
I can speak, Samara, here. Hello.
Go ahead, Samara.
Okay, I just didn't see myself come up. The main takeaway for me, the word is accountability. And I love how that became such an emphasis for how we ended the group, how our future actions have to do with being accountable, which what we're simmering with is it's not about white people deciding what work needs to be done, that accountability is really about following the lead of people of color. And that was so beautifully outlined by the book. The book was a hard slog of a book, but being with each other and talking about it and really like making conscious, oh, wait, that's something that not all of us were white. 4 people weren't white in the group, but they were patient with us who were white, saying, oh, we just think you join something and you throw money. That's not really accountability. That's a white thing to do. And I love how we started to call out each other on that and to push each other to think about what organizations already have leadership, have already decided what's important, that has non-white leadership that we can get behind. So I'm excited about that for our future.
Very good. Thank you, Samara.
Yeah.
Someone else, what did you learn? How are you different as a result of participating in the Widening the Circle discussion?
Go
ahead,
my
Betty.
name is Betty. Yes, I joined mostly because I am a minority. This fellowship is predominantly white. I'm one of the few colored people there, and also is a topic that touches me, especially in the work that I'm doing at the fellowship with immigration justice. I really, I have been a member for a short time, only 4 years, and I fell in love with your principles. And I just felt that under President Trump, there was a lot of work to be done, especially with all the executive orders that he was passing. It was very damaging to our community. So I just felt that I was in the right place when I came across the UU, that you embrace social justice, and this is the place where I can do a lot of the work. And that's what I learned, that we as Unitarians still need to do a lot of work ahead. And I'm hoping that I could be of some service, and I hope to learn from you too. Thank you.
Indeed, there's definitely a lot of work to do. Thank you for sharing, Betty. Someone else who was part of the group, what did you learn? Yes. Oh,
Hi.
Hi, Jackie. Can you lower
hi.
your camera just a little bit, because we're looking at your forehead?
Oh, well, why?
And it's a
better the
pleasant
rest of me.
forehead. There's your whole face.
There you go. One thing I learned about the survey, which really surprised me, is there's a lot of people in the congregation or in the fellowship have concerns about the welcoming committee and about welcoming into the church. And that really surprised me, because I thought we really did a good job. But apparently that was concern of a lot of people in the congregation or in the fellowship. I'm sorry. Okay.
Jackie, do you remember anything specific from that discussion, a specific concern that was especially surprising to you?
Well, it was just the fact that, and we all talked about it. It's like, people have complained that they've come in and people have not been engaging in them, or they overcrowd them, like come in and like, oh my gosh, you're Black, I want you to do this, this, and this, and I want you to be on this committee. It's like we need to be more aware of how we present ourselves as we welcome people. And it was really interesting, because like I said, when I came in, I was so welcomed, it was terrific. But there were people that saying when they came in, they were not welcomed at all. So it was really an eye-opener.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because when people come into the doors for the first time, the welcome that they receive is really important, clearly. And I think all of you have been new at some point, and you can relate to that. Sometimes we under-welcome people, we ignore them and maybe give them too much space, don't acknowledge their presence. But it's also possible to smother people, especially those that represent groups that we would like to have more of, whether that's minorities, or here's another popular one, a family with young children. We always love to smother those folks and say, oh, you can be involved in our RE program, and maybe you'd like to teach, and here's a committee you could serve on, and welcome, welcome, welcome. So that's absolutely something that we need to work on, is that good middle ground where we make sure that everyone is welcomed, and especially allowed for the first couple of times visiting us just to sit and listen and not to be smothered with all of these ideas and ways they can be involved. So I'm really, really glad that you brought that up, Jackie. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Oh, Let's move on to, somebody
Dan?
else?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Stephanie again.
Oh, hi, Steph.
There's another aspect of welcoming, and we discussed that in the circle. Welcoming congregation, that is welcoming members of the LGBTQ community. That is a long-term training program that this congregation last underwent probably 15 years ago or more. And although we have the gay pride flag outside, we have people who are of that community as members, but I am not sure that the majority are prepared for those that will really stand out.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, Stephanie. The welcoming congregation is a designation that the UUA started several years ago, and there was never really any follow-up. Well, there's discussion in recent years about having recertification, and when we do reopen, I certainly would encourage us to put together a group that would work on helping us become recertified as a welcoming congregation, because we absolutely, while we do a good job in many ways, there's still a lot we can learn. There's always more than we can learn. Speaking of work to do, let's move on to the third question, which is now what? We've had 20 people having this discussion about widening the circle for 11 weeks. And so everyone gets a certificate, and now it's like, okay, we've widened the circle, we're all aware, we've done our job, yay, and now we're done. Of course, that's not the case. In most ways, the work is just beginning. So I'd like to invite some of you who were part of the discussion to share what comes next, either part of what the discussion was Thursday night, some of the conclusions and our next steps, but also your own personal work. What is it that you know you have to do, or that you would like to encourage us to do as a congregation as we move forward? So the question is, now what? We've done this, now what do we do? Anybody who was part of that group like to share?
Just unmute. I see a hand up from the group, but you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, just go ahead and start talking. I can't see the hand, so I can't call on anybody.
I'd like to start talking because one of the main topics that I had throughout the conversation was action, that we get around to making things happen. And I believe that there was some success, especially in our last stage, about how we will move forward. And of course, one of them is that we will continue to have a group. And the purpose of this service, in my opinion, was important to include the widening the circle topic as an invitation to the whole congregation to join the process, to join the group, to be part of our ongoing activity, and to help decide what those major moves will be. For myself, I'm totally committed to education. And my personal hope is that the group will move forward in helping people behave more anti-racistly, and I made that one up. And I also hope that we build more critical thinking skills in our population, both here in the church and in our community. So those kinds of goals are a focus that I intend to continue to promote as we continue the process. I also hope that people that I consider are critical contributors, and that includes all the people of color, are joined by the LGBTQ community, and also those people who are marginalized in our culture, in our conversation. And I also would include all women in that group.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bill, for sharing. I love the fact that you used the word invitation, because that's really where we are, is sharing the invitation outside of the group of 20 now to the rest of the congregation. to say we invite you to join us on this journey, to be a part of this journey that is both personal and it's corporate as far as the congregation goes. So that's an excellent, excellent word to use, invitation. Someone else, what else would you like to share about our now what? We've done this discussion, so what difference does that make?
Well, I'll throw my 2 bits in again. This is Joe Oyer. You know, personally, what I need to do is move myself along in this journey. But I think with respect to a welcoming committee, a welcoming committee that has been trained in anti-racist, diversity, equity, inclusion, philosophy is really important. I think partnering with groups, be they religious groups or other groups in our area, social service groups, is important if we identify areas where we think we could be helpful. And I would second what Samara had to say, is that it's not up to us to say, hey, here's what we'll do for you. It's what can we do with you following your lead. So I think that these are, we need to, I could say myself, reset my mindset in terms of how we participate in this process. So I think that we can go individual, we can go congregational, and we can go outside into our general community. And I think that there are opportunities in all of those aspects. So that's all I have to say.
Good. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate that. One of the exciting outcomes of the group that you're going to hear more about over the coming weeks is that we decided to change the name of the Racial Justice Committee to the Anti-Racism Team, which someone pointed out that creates the acronym ART. Just by chance. And it doesn't mean we're no longer doing racial justice. In fact, just the opposite. You cannot do the work of anti-racism without doing racial justice and all of the things that means under all the umbrellas of racism and racial justice work. So you know that we've had a racial justice team for a few years. You may primarily know them through the work they've done with racial monologues, which has been really important and very successful in many ways. But the idea of morphing that and changing the name that's much more than symbolic, but indicates the actual work, the task that group will have to the anti-racism team is something you're going to learn more about. So look for an announcement very soon about a meeting that we'll invite everyone to be part of this newly formed, renamed anti-racism team. It doesn't just include the people who were part of the Widening the Circle discussion, but it really is for all of us. If you have an interest now in doing more work personally about becoming an anti-racist, not just saying I'm not racist, it's a huge difference to say I'm not racist and I'm anti-racist. If you're interested in learning more about that, if you want to be part of the group that helps us as a congregation look deeply in a difficult way at all of our practices, our policies, our bylaws, and everything, and try to root out the underlying racism that exists and fix that, you can be part of the anti-racism team too. So please look for more information on that. Basically, the message is there's a big percentage of people who dedicated themselves to this discussion over the past 11 weeks. We've got about 120 members, and there's about another 50 people or so that we call friends or who show up on a regular basis. But during this pandemic, since we've been broadcasting live on Zoom, there's been maybe 80 or 90 people in or out on a semi-regular basis. So to have 20 out of 80 or 90 participate for 3 months in this discussion, that's nearly 25%, give or take a little bit, of the people who are participating with us weekly. That is a huge percentage. And when I share that with my UU ministry colleagues, everyone's jealous. And so I, for one, am both proud and excited about the work that we've done and the even harder work that we have to do moving forward. So thank you all to Ginger and Kay and Samara for facilitating that, for making that something that happens. Thank you for Ginger, to Ginger for taking up the bulk of that responsibility by actually leading the discussion every week. And thank you to the others who participated and were willing to begin the work or continue the work of examining ourselves in some very difficult ways. And then you will all become leaders as we move this forward over the coming weeks and months. Amen and blessed be. Dorothy Parmenter, who was also part of the group, has our closing words. Dorothy, please go ahead and unmute and share.
Okay. Our closing words were actually by Monica Cummings, who was a UU minister from Kenosha, Wisconsin, and it's entitled, Let It Be Done. Dear unknown, unknowable, yet known by many names, keep us mindful that we are all related, that when one of us is ignored and treated with disease, we all suffer. Today, let each of us commit to welcome the stranger. Let us move beyond our comfort zones and connect with people labeled different and pushed to the edges of society. We can make a difference. We can transform lives. We can bring harmony and healing to the places and spaces where we live, work, and play. Let us keep our hearts and minds open and receptive to the still small voice that calls us to stand witness for those who cannot stand, to speak the truth for justice for those without a voice, and to lead the way on the journey toward wholeness for those without sight. In the spirit of love, compassion, and community, let it be done. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Thank you so much, Dorothy. Just a couple of reminders as we come towards the end of the service. It is our annual meeting today that we're going to start about 11:45. Anyone who's a member, we ask that you stay. And if you're a member, you're allowed to vote. If you're not a member, you can still stay and listen in. It just means that you don't get to vote when it comes time to do that. And of course, it takes us time to count the members that are present, to establish a quorum, to do all of that. So if you happen to be watching on YouTube Live right now and you want to vote because you're a member, we ask that you go to your email and log in on Zoom, because there's no way for us to register your vote if you're watching on YouTube Live. So please go ahead and do that after we close the service and before 11:45. Again, that'll help us establish a quorum. So anyone is welcome to stay and be a part of that. We have clearly, important business to talk about, as always, the election of new officers, the approving of the budget for the coming year, and a really important proposal coming from the Immigration Justice Committee about joining a statewide immigration justice group that they will share about, which has some exciting implications and possibility for us down the road. So please stick around and be a part of that. But for now, it's time to extinguish the chalice, but not the light of hope, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of community. May these ideals shine in our lives and warm our hearts until we are together again. And now let's sing Go Now in Peace.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere.
Now I remind you, as I do every week, to be a blessing to those that you meet wherever you may go. Be a blessing to those that are sharing a home with you during this pandemic because they're sharing a home with you. And be a blessing to yourself because our patience is short, our anxiety is high, our fear is real, the unknown is terrible. But we do see an end to this pandemic. So please be patient, extend grace to everyone including yourself, and be a blessing wherever you go.